All right. Thanks, you guys, for joining this. I'm Bob Ward from Cleveland Park Smart Growth, and we'll go around just a moment and introduce the rest of the panel. This is a sort of information Q&A on the project that's happening up on Wisconsin Avenue, across from Cathedral Commons on the north side. And so let's just have a quick introduction. David, I'll kick it over to you.
Thank you, Bob. My name is David Christille. I'm also with the Cleveland Park Smart Growth. I'm also the chair of Ward 3 Vision, and great to be here. Thanks.
Ellen?
I'm Ellen McCarthy. I'm formerly the planning director in DC, and I am a member of Ward 3 Vision and live in Upper Northwest.
Great. And Beck?
My name is Beck Vissat. I am the principal at 10 Square Development, and I am the current owner of 3427 Wisconsin Avenue, and I am the one who will be moving this process along.
Great. Marty?
Hi, Marty Sullivan with Sullivan and Barrows, and I'm land use counsel for Mr. Vissat.
Awesome. I'm going to just share my screen and see if we can get the, so we can orient people about what we're talking about here in the neighborhood. Yeah, let me move over to Wisconsin Avenue. There we go. So here we are on Wisconsin Avenue. You guys see this?
Yep.
Okay. Two houses fronting Wisconsin Avenue. This is Norton Place on the right. This is Ordway Street on the left. We're across the street from Cathedral Commons. There's the Starbucks. So Beck, why don't you just kind of like walk us through what's been going on here? You purchased this house on the right. Tell us a little bit more about what's going on.
Yeah, so I purchased the house on the right. We're referred to it as a green roof house. There's a vacant lot on the corner there. It's actually two separate lots. Both are zoned RA1. Started the design process, all the neighbor outreach, extensive neighbor outreach with the neighbors on North Street and Ordway. We proceeded through the process. I heard their concerns, revised their design, tweaked it. It was a real collaborative effort. When I started going to the community presentations, planning and zoning, A&C, I started to hear from community members and commissioners inquiring about upzoning these lots to RA2, how these lots played into the future land map. So at that point in time, I reached out to Marty and started to pick his brain for the possibility of upzoning these lots to provide more density and affordability. And at that point, through outreach to OP, your groups got involved. We started to see that there really was something here, and they're starting to gain some traction across the board. So at that point, put the brakes on the current 20-unit design. I went and got the red roof house, which is 3433, under contract. And at this point in time, obviously we're here for a reason. We are planning to proceed and move forward with the RA2 map amendment.
So I don't know, tell us more about the zoning change. I mean, why do you need to do it? What does it mean for the project if you get a map amendment? Maybe talk just briefly, like what does that mean?
Yeah. So right now the lot's currently zoned RA1, which RA stands for residential apartment. RA1 is actually the most restrictive zoning of the RA category. Being on Wisconsin Avenue, which is clearly a major corridor in DC, over Northwest, RA1 is really, it just does not fit into the commerciality of Wisconsin Avenue in this day and age. Both these historic homes were built in 1924. If you drive north up Wisconsin, south down Wisconsin, zoning is much more favorable, more density, more affordability. So we are able to, through a map amendment, we're actually able to double the density. The building does grow by a story, which is 10 feet. So the building would go from 3 stories to 4 stories. Our unit count increases roughly 55 units from the current planned 20-unit building.
What happens to the houses?
The plan with the houses, because obviously right now they are facing Wisconsin, the green roof house will be moved and rotated 90 degrees, so it is facing Norton Street, sorry. The red roof house, which is 3433, will be rotated 90 degrees to the north and moved adjacent to the neighbor's house on Ordway. So both these historic homes are going to be retained, not harmed in any way. They will be fully renovated. They will be sold as single family homes. They're not being converted to condos or apartments, which actually the current zoning allows for. So RA1, you can convert these single family homes to apartments. That's not the plan. So by moving these homes to the adjacent side streets, it really draws, almost a boundary to where the residential side street ends and then the commercial Wisconsin Avenue begins. So having an RA2 multifamily building that spans from Ordway to Norton Street on Wisconsin fits the thread of the corridor significantly more so than the current condition, or even if I was to stick with the RA1 and have a 20-unit building on the corner.
And just to clarify, this is these two residential houses that are there now. The future land use map has this property as what? Is it moderate residential
That'd
density?
be a Marty Sullivan question.
It's moderate density residential, which translates to RA2. It translates to anything from R3 through RF, RA1, and RA2.
Was this, do you know, Marty, this land wasn't, the FLUM wasn't changed here during the recent amendment process, right? It's been moderate density for.
Correct. Yeah, it has not changed.
Okay. David or Ellen, you want to?
Yeah, so I'll jump in. So affordable housing is a big need in Cleveland Park. So if you could talk about the affordable housing requirement and how the regulations will require more zoning if you get the upzoning, and how that would compare for your current project, and then talk a little bit about the range of affordability that you're contemplating in your proposal.
Definitely. So right now, the 20-unit project under the RA1 regulations only requires one 2-bedroom unit at 920 square feet. So if 20 units, 19 on market rate, one is a 2-bedroom unit, 920 square feet. By proceeding through the map amendment and having this upzone to RA2, the IZ requirement now falls under the IZ Plus program, which means 20% of the sellable square footage needs to be IZ. That we're still working through. Well, we're just starting the process of the new design for the RA2 building. Will be somewhere between 7,500 square feet to 8,500 square feet of IZ. That equates to roughly 10 to 15 units. The unit matrix, the makeup, would probably be about 66% 1-bedrooms to 33% 2-bedrooms. Once again, this is all, what I believe we'll end up with. Things change in the process and all that. So, very, very early in the stage of this. So right there, we're going from one 2-bedroom unit to easily 10 to 15 IZ units, a significant increase from where we're at right now. A step further in all this, right now, the single family home average price in Cleveland Park is over $2 million. The IZ program at the 80% median family income, a 1-bedroom is $267,000 and a 2-bedroom is $297,000. So by providing the IZ plus requirements of 20%, we're clearly taking affordability from that $2 million plus price tag right down to around $275,000 to $300,000. And we are providing 10 to 15 times the IZ requirement that the current project was going to provide.
So it sounds like over the process, you've got, it could be a mix of 1s and 2s and probably more 1s than 2s, but it's a mix. And I understand that the regulations could be a range of income. So it sounds like this would be a good, for a moderate income person looking for an ownership opportunity. This would be a great, great option.
Definitely, because right now Cleveland Park in general and Wisconsin Avenue too, very, very, very apartment heavy. There's not a lot of new condos coming to the area, and especially not, new multifamily building where it's going to be 50, 55 units. So just in looking through that lens, aside from there's just not a lot of buying opportunities because it is so apartment heavy, now we are providing the affordability where teachers, civil servants, they can actually afford to move into this neighborhood, send kids to the school district. I mean, I think there's 5 or 6, 7 schools are walking distance from here. So, once again, being able to provide 20% inclusionary zoning over the 920 square foot unit is, significantly more.
I mean, I would agree. That's quite a bump in the number of affordable units that could be sought if this, gets the map amendment. Thanks, Beck.
Correct. Yep.
Ellen, I think you're on mute.
So in terms of land use and community character, it does seem it seems very positive in a lot of ways to me that you are retaining the community character on the side streets and retaining or extending the character on Wisconsin to be livelier, more of a higher scale, but not a scale that would be out of character with either the rest of the residential area on the east side of Wisconsin, and certainly not out of character with the west side. How do you contemplate the delineating between the rear of the apartment buildings that'll be facing Wisconsin and the residential, the 2 houses that you're moving around to the side streets?
Yeah, good question. So, as I talked about earlier, swinging the historic homes to Ordway and Norton Street, clearly we're going to be retaining the homes. Right now, big picture, they don't fit into Wisconsin Avenue. Once again, this is not 1924. So swinging those homes around to the side streets, once again, it was supported by historic preservation officer staff. We, HPRB supported it. The community supported it. So across the board, everyone is on board with moving the homes. The multifamily in Wisconsin, once again, it now is Wisconsin facing. It fits into the thread. RA2 is considered moderate density. If you go a block or 2 south in Wisconsin, you have 10-story buildings. So, we're not proposing a 10-story building here that's necessarily going to tower over the neighborhood. So between the fact that we're extending the residential street, and then we have the moderate density RA2 building on Wisconsin that spans street to street, we feel, that really delineates that residential side street from the commerciality of Wisconsin Avenue.
Beck, you've gone through, as you mentioned, the HPRB process for the 20-unit building that you've been working on for the last few months. There's been some comment on the design from various, members of the community and whatnot. What are your plans for the larger building? Is it going to be essentially a larger version of the same thing? Or are you going to look at it fresh? Talk to us about that. I mean, you may not be there, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, I never really thought this through because, like I said, through the, proposing this product, before I even met with the P&Z, the ANC, or anyone, I did a bunch of offline, not literally offline, side conversations with the neighbors of Norton Street. My direct neighbor, very great couple, they have helped, they were essentially reaching out to neighbors, setting up the Zoom calls. So I had 3 or 4 meetings with everyone prior to even getting to the actual official process of presenting to the different committees. And it was a real collaborative effort. Like I said, it was complete honesty, transparency. It was obviously we were on different sides of the table, but it was a great coming together of the minds and just everyone open conversation. So, you know, that being said, there was a little bit of hesitation with the neighbors with the design and nothing to do with the massing. The massing was completely fine. You know, in theory, the plan was completely fine. Some people liked it, some people didn't like the design. I view this as a new opportunity to really actually call it fix what people's hesitations were with the original design. And, you know, almost to the point we're going back to the drawing board. You know, I have no problem really hearing out what people want us to change and actually addressing it now. So yes, to answer your question, after that long-winded answer, yes, we will be going back to the drawing board with the design. It will not resemble the original 20-unit building. And this is, like I said, a great opportunity where we can definitely come up with something that even from the design perspective, coloring, brick, details, really is getting a lot of support from the neighbors versus kind of the hemming and hawing that we had with the existing 20-unit building.
You going to be seeking any relief?
No, so at this time, once again, you know, preface it with we are literally just at the tip of the iceberg with everything. Right now, I do not believe we will need any relief. We will not need any parking relief. We will actually be providing more parking than is required. Right now, just make some assumptions. If we were building a 50-unit building, we would need 16 parking spaces. We're actually allowed a 50% reduction due to the bus line, which means we would only need eight spots. To put that into perspective, my 20-unit building is actually providing 7 spots. So the fact that on the 20-unit building, obviously a much smaller lot, I fit 7 parking spots. You know, now with this larger building spanning Ordway to Norton Street, I will definitely be able to exceed the minimum requirement of 8 parking spots for 50 units. I don't know exactly what that top end is going to look like, but a safe assumption is at least 15, 16, 17 spots. So, you know, no parking relief will be required. I'll actually be exceeding the zoning requirements by 2x, maybe even 2.33 is what I'm thinking.
Where would you anticipate the entrance to the parking?
Yep. So once again, you know, very early in the process, we will have to provide a traffic study. You know, through that report, I'm not sure what the recommendations are going to be. You know, right now there is a existing curb cut on Norton Street. Our plan for the 20-unit building was to use that existing curb cut for the multifamily. You know, ideally that plan moves forward with the RA2 map amendment project. But until we really, you know, have the early meetings with DDOT, you know, until we have the traffic study, for all I know, it could be, we're told it's Ordway Street. You know, I don't anticipate it being on Wisconsin. Early on, we did meet with DDOT about the 20-unit building and a Wisconsin curb cut, and it was quickly shot down. So once again, early in design and just starting these conversations, I believe it's probably going to be on Ordway, possibly, or like I said, we're going to use the existing curb cut on Norton Street for the multifamily.
I guess if I could, I have a follow-up question on the parking. I mean, how would you I know there's a lot in flux, but on the parking spaces and units, how do you anticipate distributing those amongst the units? They come part of the unit, or there'd be a lottery, or just talk a little bit about that. I know it's kind of a detail but just what your thinking is on that.
Right. No, good question. You know, I haven't really made the definitive plan yet. Like you said, super early in the process. Typically on projects, it's a first come, first serve basis. You know, buyers come in, the parking space is obviously sold to people. You know, just because the first 15 people buy units doesn't mean they're taking the first 15 spots. I have had 10-unit buildings with 1 parking spot and the 8th buyer purchased that spot. You know, surprisingly enough, maybe it is, maybe it's not for some people. Not everyone has a car in DC. So the assumption that if this is a 50-unit building, there's going to be 50 cars, that's just not accurate. I mean, that is just completely not accurate. And I can tell you from experience, so many projects in the city, many condo units, the ratio is actually skewed probably to the farther end where people don't need parking and actually do not have cars. So because of that, you know, just to answer your question again, it's a first come, first serve basis. You know, it might take 30, 35 units sold to actually sell those 15 parking spots in all reality.
Right. I live in a 50-unit building and we have 16 parking spaces, and you know, we manage it. So
yeah, exactly.
But the parking spaces are sold separately.
Correct. They are, exactly. They're deeded separately. They have their own tax ID numbers. They are, when you buy one, you own that 9 by 19
Right.
parking space as yours.
Right. So, which is always a good incentive for people to think about whether they really need a car by the time they add the cost of buying the parking space and the insurance and the maintenance and right now the cost of buying a car, even a used one. So
you pay taxes on it. You also, your HOA fees, that's square footage. Obviously it's not a tremendous amount. That square footage is in your HOA calculation. So yes, there is, owning that spot clearly has, you know, holding costs, associated carrying costs, right?
So real quick, you were going forward on this one lot, and now this opportunity came up for the house next door was to be sold. If you stick, let's say this map amendment process, I don't know, gets opposed, whatever. What happens to the other house, and what could happen to that site? And, how does your project benefit the community rather than that sort of like alternate view?
Yeah, so I'll just give you a brief history. Prior to, or while I was acquiring my 3427 lot, the greenhouse, and then the vacant house in the corner, I was also speaking with the neighbor, the owner of 3433, the red roof house. I was trying to acquire his property at that time. His call it floor for his selling price was much too high for me to be able to purchase it under the existing RA1 regulations and have it part of my project. So, like I said, I wasn't able to come to a deal with him. We parted ways. He then went and listed his property on the open market. Once again, it was at that price that he and I initially were discussing. The only way someone would be able to afford the property at what it was listed for was if they were to buy it, renovate the house, either turn it to condos or apartments, and then his side yard, they would have to subdivide the lot and essentially erect a narrow 9, 10, 11, 12 unit building in his side yard. So if I was to proceed with my 20 unit building and you're looking at this block from Wisconsin, you would have his historic red roof house, flipped condos or apartments. You'd have a slim, little narrow 3-story building over a cellar in his side yard. And then you'd have my 20 unit building on the corner. So you'd have these 3 vastly different structures basically stuck in there like a bookshelf. So when this whole RA2 discussion came about, obviously being able to have more density, I was actually able to meet his asking price that he wanted. So essentially, rather than have another builder developer come in and purchase the property in the side yard, I am able to now incorporate his land into the bigger project. I can now, afford to pay the cost to move his house to Ordway, which is very significant. So, the new project spanning Ordway to Norton Street gives you one continual building compared to the flip side, which would be 3 separate structures, 3 different owners, apartments, condos, mishmash.
Plus, I would think that the original scheme or his notion, the buyer's notion of that house, were your deal not to go through, I'm not even sure that would pass muster with historic preservation, because when they review new construction, they review it in terms of whether it has an adverse impact on existing historic resources. If that house were still in situ, might be difficult with HPRB to square that as consistent, as opposed to when you're moving the house around the corner, you're retaining that house, but you're retaining it in a condition or in an environment that is more consistent with the character of that historic building.
Spot on. I mean, once again, from the early discussions with HPO, is full support between moving the homes from Wisconsin to the side streets. HPRB full support the neighbors, full support the ANC. In all their reports, they have said that there's never been a pushback on moving the homes or the massing of the original building. It was just more of design type things like that. And that came through a lot, like I said, neighbor outreach, speaking with all the agencies, offline conversations. So yes, you're 100% correct with that.
I know we're running out of time. I think David has to drop off real quick. Public input to this process. There's, I assume, going to be lots of opportunity for the neighborhood organizations to weigh in as this moves forward.
Correct. Yes, there's no deviating from, as an RA2 by right project, we are not deviating from the historic approval process, the presentations to the P&Z, the ANC, the ARC. That entire process remains exactly the same, where it will still be a collaborative effort. I am not, out of the gates, I kind of
What about the map amendment? Sorry to interrupt. What about the map
yeah.
amendment process?
Yep, same thing. So we still present to the P&Z, the ANC. So everyone, it is still in that sense the same thing, where we're going through all those community meetings and the presentations need to garner the support. So even that is the same process where people's voices will be heard throughout this process.
Yeah, and I'll add, we filed, or we're sending today the notice of intent to file. And so we'll have a 45-day period before we can file the application, and we've committed to attend, or required to do our best to attend an ANC meeting prior to filing the application. And of course, it'll go to the full ANC when the ANC is ready to hear that. So it'll go through a public process just like any other discretionary zoning application.
Great. Well, we're out of time. I really want to thank you guys for spending the time talking to us about this. I'm sure this will not be the last time we speak. Our members of Ward 3 Vision and Cleveland Park Smart Growth, I think, are going to be, curious to how this moves forward. And so we'll be engaged in that public process, as I think the neighborhood will be as well. So thanks. It sounds like a really interesting project.
Yeah, no, thank you, for organizing this. I appreciate everyone taking the time, and yeah, we will continue to speak and interact as we move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marty.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.